a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he says, on all who spend in good cause. Good deeds are opportunities, sparkling bright and true, raising you in the sight of Allah and adorning Al-Jannah for you. So rush to earn his reward. Don't forget the oppressed. And when you go to sleep at night.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Our Time to Please Allah, your weekly chat show coming to you live from Dubai at 7 p.m. Makkah time. My name is Asif Salim, and I'm really glad that you all could join us and be with us here, for this episode of A Time to Please Allah. I think this show is very important because our work, the work week is coming to an end. For some of us it's ended, for others it's about to end. And we need to take that time to kind of return back and recharge a little bit and spend some time, give some time for Allah and remind ourselves where our values and our priorities really are. And this show gives us that opportunity to share some time with you, our viewers, and I hope that we can get that interaction from you as well. Call us on our number, and we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what you have to say, especially about what we're going to be talking about today. So, one of the things that people, actually, it's a saying they have in the West. They say that what is popular is never right, and what is right is never popular. And actually this is, I've kind of changed the statement. The original statement, as I remember, is what is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right. But I've kind of changed it and said that it's never right. What's popular is very rarely, if ever, the right thing to do. And the right thing is very rarely, if ever, a popular thing. So this idea, it holds true, of course, when it comes to the absolute truth, which is, of course, Islam. If you go back in the history, if you talk about the prophets, if you talk about the messengers that were sent, if you talk even after our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after which there was no prophets and messengers sent, throughout the history, from day one, the truth, or the people of the truth, were always not the majority. They were not the common. They were not the popular. It was never the popular trend, if you will. So this idea is very important, and it has been mentioned by our Prophet ﷺ in more than one occasion and in more than one situation. This idea has been addressed and defined by the Prophet ﷺ of how we should approach this issue. And so I'm joined by my guest, Brother Iyadi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you doing, brother?
Doing okay, brother.
I'm glad to see you here. It's been a while.
Glad to be here.
Alhamdulillah. So we were just talking a little bit about the popularity of certain ideas, and is that in any way a sign that this idea is necessarily correct or incorrect?
Well, of course, as you kind of alluded to initially, that specifically with regards to the prophets, the Anbiya, that they came with a message, and of course we know that that message was correct. Whether you're a Muslim or a Jew or Christian, you know that the message of the prophets is correct. But was that message popular when they brought it? And the answer each and every time for every prophet, every messenger is going to be no, it was not popular. However, it was correct. And specifically for our Prophet, alayhi salam, all of our prophets, but specifically the Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salam, he came with the message of Tawheed, pure Islamic monotheism in his time. And of course, that seemed extremely strange to the people, even though they should have known that this background was correct. If they would have looked and reflected, they would have known. But to the people at the time, this message of Tawheed was very strange. It was almost heresy to the people at that time. But of course, we now know it to be the truth. And to prove the point, it was so strange that they fought. They fought against the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. You know, he was a person that came to them. He was known as Amin. People would have trusted him with their lives. Before he came preaching Islamic Tawheed, they would have given anything. If he said something was going to happen, they believe him immediately. But as soon as he came preaching Islam, preaching Tawheed, they saw this as something very strange, almost heresy to them. They fought him. The person that initially they said was truthful, they now called him a liar. They called him a magician, a sorcerer. He's a poet. He's crazy. The people that followed him, they tortured those individuals. And eventually, they put him out. You know, they sent him packing. So this is just to show the viewers that even in those times, the truth, even though it was the truth, it was not something that was popular. It was not something that the masses were going to. So the lesson that we should take from that is not always to follow the masses. The masses, they're not going to lead you to paradise. It is the truth, whether it's popular or not. And generally, it's not going to be popular because it's difficult.
Right. I think more often than not, the truth is not popular.
And yeah, that's for sure. Because it's not easy for the nafs, for the desires, to acknowledge that what I'm doing is wrong. Follow the truth. It takes a little bit of humility, a lot of humility actually. It takes a lot of humility, it takes a lot of responsibility, and it takes the basira from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you to acknowledge that and to follow that which the rest of everybody's telling you is not cool or is not right or is strange.
And I think the simple proof for this, okay, is that there's going to be a lot more people in the hellfire than in Jannah.
Yes.
Right? Jannah is going to be an exclusive club, and Jahannam is going to be the popular hangout.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry to use that sort of terminology, but the fact of the matter remains, we know the hadith that on the Day of Judgment, Allah will order that, you know, for the people to be taken to Jannah and Jahannam, and I believe the Malaika will ask Allah, how many? It's for every 1,999 should be taken and put into the hellfire. Now, of course, we know this is largely going to be due to the fact of the Juj and Ma'juj.
Yes.
But the idea that the vast majority of the people of insan will be in the hellfire.
Right.
Wal-'iyadhu billah.
Right. And, you know, not that we're trying to say that anybody right now, I'm going to say that this particular person is going to be in hellfire or not, but everybody can look in their own lives and just look around them and just ask yourself, who are the people doing good? Who are the people doing bad? And just look at the percentages, just in your own life, you know, going to work, you know, on your way to work, if you ride the bus or if you're walking, you know, or at work itself, if you're in school. Look at the percentage of people that you would consider as a good person or those who would be bad. And just look at the percentage, look at the difference. And most likely you're going to find that the majority of those people are not going to be doing a good thing, unless you're blessed to, you know, work in a very good environment. But most people are not. Most people are not.
Well, and I think we should take another step back here, and I think you're making a good point here, but let's take it to the next level, or a more basic level, if you will. Defining good and bad.
MashaAllah.
Right? So how do people define what is good and bad? I remember a sheikh, he once mentioned that in what Allah considers good and what Allah considers bad, and what most people consider good and what people consider bad, the difference between that is the heavens and the earth.
Yes.
Right? So what do we consider good? Right? We go to somebody's house, right, and he puts out a nice spread of food, and the shai is nice and warm. We say he's a good man right there. That's our criteria.
SubhanAllah.
Right? He was a hospitable host, which is not a bad thing by any means, but that by no means necessarily means that he's a good
It's the
person.
ultimate criterion, exactly.
Right. So we have to have the right lenses on, the right glasses on when we look at things and say, is this good or bad?
Right. So from our perspective, we should really, when we're talking about good and bad, how I look at things should be Quran wa Sunnah. the Quran and the Sunnah, how much a person is following those two things, how much they're striving to follow those two things, and how far they are striving to stay away from that which opposes those two things.
Right.
So generally for the Muslims, the Quran, we're not going to have disputes about that. But the issue is with the Sunnah. You know, how close are you following the Sunnah? Do you care about the Sunnah? You know, are you learning about the Sunnah? These kind of things. This to me should be the criterion, because how else, like you mentioned, how do we know what Allah considers good and what He considers bad? Well, it's going to be in the Quran, in His injunctions. When Allah tells you do this, of course you know that's good. Allah tells us to pray. He commands us to pray, commands us to fast. These are all good things.
Right.
These are all good things. And also in the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, we find commandments. We also find things that he suggests for us to do. These are all good things. And then on the other side, we've been commanded to stay away from certain things. You know, whether it's the dietary prohibitions that we have, or business transactions that are not allowed,
or doing the haram.
This should be the criterion. This should be the measure stick that we use to say what is good and what is bad.
Right. So I would say that a lot of times, unfortunately, in this day and age, we are looking at things the wrong way to start with. Right. So what we consider good and bad, a lot of times when we look at the ummah in general, we're looking at the wrong things. Right? We're looking at what kind of a job you have.
Yes.
We're looking at what kind of car you drive, what kind of clothes you wear. And the hadith is very clear when the Prophet ﷺ said that إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَنظُرُ إِلَىٰ صُوَرِكُمْ وَلَا إِلَىٰ أَجْسَامِكُمْ. That He does not look at your appearance, He does not look at your bodies, He does not look at that outward, the superficial. وَلَكِنْ يَنظُرُ إِلَىٰ قُلُوبِكُمْ وَأَعْمَالِكُمْ. Rather, He looks at your hearts and He looks at your actions, He looks at your deeds. That's how Allah will judge us. And that's how we have to consider the good and the bad. When we say a person is good, like you said, we have to use the criteria of the Quran and Sunnah to define whether this person is good or bad. And I think this kind of brings us back to the topic that we're talking about. Why Islam, the truth, even before Islam, when it was with the other prophets, or after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when we have this deen, Islam, it's complete. Why is it strange, right? And what this idea that it will be strange. I mean, this is a very important subject here.
Right. So there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he ﷺ, he said that indeed Islam began as something strange, and it will return as something strange. Something strange in the way it began, and so give good tidings to the strangers.
Subhanallah.
You know, Islam began strange and will end as something strange, the same way that it began. So give good tidings to the strangers, those people who followed that strange way.
Right.
Now, I remember when as a new Muslim, when I heard this, I didn't have the proper understanding. To me, strange just meant weird.
Yeah.
You know, I just thought it meant to be weird. And I thought, why? What kind of hadith is this? Why would somebody say this? But then some of the brothers, you know, alhamdulillah, may Allah give them khair, they explained that what this means is that Islam began as something strange in that when the Prophet Muhammad came, ﷺ, the people were drowning in shirk. They were drowning in the worship of things that had no right to be worshipped. And when the Prophet, ﷺ, when he came telling people you should worship Allah alone with no partners, this to them was like bringing thunder and lightning down immediately and destroying their cities. They thought that this was strange. Right? This issue to them was strange. And so those brothers explained to me that this is what is meant, not being weird, doing funny things. This is what it was meant. And that it will return as something strange. That in the last days, in the latter days, that it will be similar to that. That you will find people practicing Islam, and the ones who are practicing, the ones who are following the injunctions of Islam will be the ones that people are looking at saying, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? And they really will be looked at as strangers.
Right, and nowadays, unfortunately, you find this idea or this sort of occurrence happening inside this ummah.
Yes.
Right? A lot of times somebody will be doing something from the Sunnah, right? And his fellow Muslims will consider him strange and weird and might even condemn him for doing that.
Right.
Right? So an example that I use that happened with me personally is once I led the prayer in a masjid, okay, and I made the sujood al-tilawa. The sajda happened in the middle of the tilawa. So after the prayer, I was basically verbally assaulted by a brother outside the masjid going, and he basically said the gist of what he was saying. He was very angry and he said, I've been praying for 40 years and I've never made 3 sujood in 1 rak'ah. And he was very angry with me.
Subhanallah.
And he wouldn't listen, and common sense, reason, nothing was there. So, subhanallah, I mean, it's obviously, we know that this is from the sunnah, and this is a good thing to do when you come to the sujood al-tilawah, that you make the sajda, even if you're in the salah. So, this brother, unfortunately, didn't know about this, okay? But, and because of that, he was condemning somebody who was doing something that was from the sunnah.
Right.
So, maybe we can chalk this up to that lack of knowledge, okay? But the fact that he was condemning somebody else and he was looking upon me as doing something strange when in fact I had done something from the sunnah.
Right.
So this happens unfortunately nowadays even within the ummah, and I think one of the scholars mentioned that the Muslims are gharib or strange amongst all of insan, amongst all mankind, and that the true believers, the mu'mineen, are strangers from amongst the Muslims.
Yes, indeed. You know, I've had a few situations like that myself where you're doing something, or I've seen things like, for instance, you know, you see some brothers who are always smiling. You know, you've probably come across brothers like this, always smiling, beautiful smile, you know, and people will ask, what is wrong with this guy? He must be crazy. He's always smiling. What's wrong with him? You know, but we know that to smile in your brother's face is sadaqah. We know the hadith tells us this.
And you probably think he's crazy or something.
Yeah, and you're thinking he's crazy, but he's trying to, and a lot of these brothers inside, they really do have love for you. When they're looking at you, you know, he's smiling because he has love for you. He has care for you.
Let's continue on this topic right after the break. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
A chance to gain reward I will spend on you, he says.
We can't just take knowledge and keep it as information. We have to transfer it into action. When he got up, he said one thing. Asalla nas, did the people pray? In Hajj, for example, the primary example of how multiculturalism really looks like. All equal. I've got a dentist in Canada. Even though he's ripping holes in my teeth, he's got great akhlaq. I love visiting him. Identify the issue. Analyze it. Challenge it. And then try again. Because if you fail, big deal. Try again and keep trying.
If I think I lost my ablution, but I'm not sure, do I have to make wudu again? Is it allowed for Muslims to visit the graveyard, or is that shirk? Am I allowed to say Jummah Mubarak to someone? Can I get to know a sister before marriage? I have so many questions, and I feel that I've just reached a dead end. If only I could find someone trustworthy to answer my questions. Someone who speaks based on proof from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet.
time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he said.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Welcome back to A Time to Please Allah. Before we continue, I just want to mention, I mentioned a hadith in the first segment about something that will happen on the Day of Judgment. I wanted to correct it. I mentioned that Allah will call out to the malaika. In fact, Allah will call out to Adam to distribute who should go to the hellfire and who should go to Jannah. And Adam will say, how many? And Allah will say to him, out of every 1,999 should go into the hellfire. So I wanted to make sure we make that correction before we continue. We were talking about the concept of the strangeness of the religion and how it was so historically and how it is now and why this is so. And so one of the things we're talking about is basically we can kind of chalk it up to the lack of knowledge that people have. People don't understand the Quran, they don't understand the Sunnah, they don't have that sacred knowledge so that they could see the people, when they actually do something good, something from the Sunnah, they can recognize it for that. And unfortunately, a lot of times in our ummah, we come across something, a situation where a person is doing something genuinely good according to the Sunnah, but because we don't know about it, we think it's strange. And this is a very sad state of affairs that our ummah has reached, where this is the problem. This is a very big problem, a sad state of affairs our ummah has reached, where this is how we approach even something that is good. So we have our brother Iyari with us to shed some light on this. So you were saying,
Yeah, I was giving an example of some brothers who smile a lot.
Yes.
And they do it because they want to make tatbiq, or they want to follow the hadith that smiling in the face of your brother is sadaqah. So these brothers are doing this, or sisters, they do this in order to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to follow the sunnah. And we know that in following the sunnah, you keep it alive. You keep that sunnah from dying. So these brothers, they smile a lot. They smile a lot, which is something we know that our Prophet was prone to do. And some people, they see this as something strange. See this as something very weird. Whether it's within Islam or outside of Islam. And especially in areas of the world where I'm from, in America, where the people in some areas tend to be very, very hard and very tough. I remember going to New York once, because I'm from the South. Went to New York, and I'm a country boy, and I'm smiling, everybody's saying hi, and people are looking at me like, what's wrong with this guy? Yeah. Even cursing me sometimes. I just thought it to be strange. But the same thing in Islam. I've seen brothers smiling at people on the way, giving salams, and people won't even return the salam, saying, why is he talking to me? Which is another sunnah, to spread the salams. We know that's a sunnah, but some people will look at them and say, why is he giving me salams? He doesn't know me, and they don't even return it. So these are examples of how, a person within the ummah can be doing something and it's still strange.
Right.
He's still strange, because we should know all these things. We know that you should return the salams, but it's come to a point now where the Muslims will only give salams to those who they know.
Yeah.
And sometimes, even if you know them, unfortunately, they don't return the salams to you. We've seen this. I've experienced this myself. And, I wanted to just mention something. We've talked a lot about the Prophet Muhammad, his time, and how the companions found difficulty with the people. But to show the point in Islamic history, the time of Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah, the time of Imam Ahmed, he was pretty much the only person from Ahl Sunnah that stood up for what was correct, what was just, what was right. The only one. He upheld the belief of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, even when he was being threatened, he was being beaten. Everybody else around him had conceded to what they were being coerced to say. But he alone was strange amongst all those people. People were asking him, why don't you just do like everybody else? Why don't you just say what the people want you to say? Don't believe it in your heart. Just say it. Just be like everybody else, because what everybody else was doing it. Everybody else was speaking about the Quran being created, in which we know this is an innovation. We know it's an innovation. But Imam Ahmed was the only one from the ulama, from the scholars of that time, to stand up and refuse and to refute this ideology.
You wonder where we'd be right now
Subhanallah.
if he hadn't have stood up.
I think about that a lot, actually.
And if he had went along with the popular notion that, that the Quran was created, when in fact we know
Yes.
that it wasn't, and it isn't. But if he had, how much damage that would have caused the ummah. But subhanallah, we know that Allah sends every 100 years or so, He sends a person who will strengthen and revive
Yes.
the deen. And surely Imam Ahmad was one of these people.
Exactly. And, Ibn Taymiyyah also was another one of these scholars who was being tortured, being forced to say something he didn't want to say. He did not want to say this, but he stood up alone when all the people around him were of a different belief, of a completely different belief. But he stood and said, I don't mind being strange. I will be strange.
Yeah.
Why? Because he's standing for the truth.
Right.
So for us in these times, when we look around us and we're trying to implement the sunnah, we're trying to follow these injunctions, and we feel like, well, everybody else is doing something different. Why should I be the only one? We should look at these characters. We should look first, of course, at the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and the prophets and the messengers. We should look at their examples to see that we have a precedent of people standing, being alone, being strange, but calling to what was correct, calling to Tawheed.
And this brings us to another issue, and we kind of have to go back to the original hadith that you mentioned about the fact that Islam entered into this world as something strange, and it will leave this world as something strange. And then the Prophet ﷺ gave glad tidings to the strangers. So, and there is a narration where the Sahaba asked the Prophet ﷺ, who are these strangers? So the Prophet ﷺ replied, they are those who correct the people after they have become corrupt. So this idea of, and we can kind of maybe expand this concept of enjoining what is right and forbidding what is wrong, right? You gave some shining examples of great scholars in the past who did exactly this. All the people around them are going down the wrong way, and in these cases, of course, they were going down the wrong way in terms of a huge aqidah issue that was related to their very core belief. And they were able to single-handedly, bifadlillah, block this idea from spreading anymore, and they were able to withstand against this. Like, imagine like they were the dam holding up this huge river, and in the face of such overwhelming odds, they stood up at great personal sacrifice to stand for the truth. And then there's a statement of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. He said that be with the jama'ah of haqq, of truth, even if it is only one person.
Yes.
Right, so this concept of jama'ah is very important, of always being together, but unfortunately in this day and age, I feel like it gets misused a lot. Right? Brother, we have to be together. Well, we have to be together on a particular basis.
Upon truth.
We have to be together upon truth, which we know is Tawheed, the oneness of Allah. Any person who comes along with something contrary to this, we cannot be together with such a person. Right? Because we have to be on the truth at all times. Our first obligation is towards Allah, then it is towards the rest of creation.
Right. And which brings us to another topic when you mentioned about forbidding good, enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, that we talked about Sunnah, we talked about the Quran, but we also need to talk about bid'ah and innovation. That we don't unite upon innovations, upon bid'ah. And it's important to know what bid'ah is. We need to know what bid'ah is. Anything newly invented in this religion is going to be rejected. This hadith of Aisha, where she said that anybody who invents, she narrated from Prophet Muhammad, not that she said it, but anybody who invents a matter in this religion that wasn't originally from it, then it will be rejected. Now again, this was a hadith, when I first read it, this is actually kind of frightening.
Yes.
That it might be that you're doing something. You're going along with the popular thing. You're going along with the people. You're going with the masses. But what they're doing might be an innovation. And you think it's good. and you wait all this time, Yawm al-Qiyamah, to find out that what you're doing, all of this is going to be rejected. You've been doing it for how many years, how many decades, and it will be rejected. You know, to me, when I first saw that, I was very frightened of this. Very frightened, because you see many things that people do in this day and age. You see people doing many things, and they think it's good. From the Muslims, they think it's good. But this action will be rejected if it is not from the religion of Islam. If the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ didn't come with it, if Allah did not reveal it in the Quran, we should leave it.
Right.
We should definitely leave it.
When it comes to the issues of worshiping,
worshiping
Allah,
of
and
course,
we need to make sure that we're in accordance with the Quran and Sunnah. And so, one of the qualities of the people, of course, the Prophet ﷺ is saying to be with these strangers, to be with these people. And as we mentioned, one of their qualities is that they're calling the people to the good.
Yes.
Right. So there's a statement that I believe Imam Ahmad narrated in his Musnad from Ubadah ibn Samit radiyallahu anh. He said that it's imminent, it's inevitable for you that if your life is prolonged long enough, that you will meet a man who will recite the Quran on the tongue of the Prophet ﷺ. He will repeat it, he will display it, and he will say the halal, whatever it says is halal, whatever he says is haram is haram. And he says the position of this man will be lowered and lowered in the eyes of the people until he is considered like that of a dead donkey. So, subhanAllah, this shows us that, first of all, what is he doing? He's reciting the Quran correctly, he is repeating it, he is showing it in his actions. He is saying what's halal is halal and what's haram is haram. That's it. This is pretty basic stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something everybody should be doing. We're not talking about climbing a mountain or bringing the moon or something. We're talking about pretty basic things here. And yet, this great Sahabi is saying that this time will inevitably come when such a person will be considered like the carcass of a dead donkey in the eyes of the people.
SubhanAllah.
So this shows that, first of all, the people who correct the people, the correctors, shall we say, those who call people to good, those who forbid them from doing the wrong, how they have generally, of course, this is the job of the prophets and messengers, and then of course this was inherited by the scholars, right? And even, you could say, the du'at, even the people who are just calling the people to the khair, how are these people considered? How are these people, should I say, mocked in the ummah many times, even in this day and age?
Yes.
Right? And we have the examples of all the prophets, like as you mentioned in the beginning, how the people reacted to them, the names that they were called, the things that they were accused of. Similarly, many good people who are calling people to khair are being attacked and being labeled and being called all sorts of things, even though they're actually genuinely calling people to good.
Yes. One of the things I've seen commonly done, and I hope the people will refrain from doing this, would be this term, people say haram police.
Oh.
You know, when somebody's clearly doing something wrong, you're doing something that is haram, and somebody tells you, you know, a person gets arrogant and is angry that you have prevented me from doing what I want to do, even though it's haram. And because maybe you're doing many things and you're being reminded on a regular basis, the person is actually trying to do good for you. The person is trying to do good for you. The person is trying to call you from something bad to something good, or at least to stop you from doing something bad. But then people turn around and then they use this term, the haram police. You know, for me, this thing hurts me. You know, because I've mentioned so many times, brothers have helped me. Brothers have helped me so much. Have told me, Yahi, you know, this thing, don't do this. Yahi, it's better to stay away from this. This has helped me. You know, so I've appreciated brothers who've done this for me. Then to hear people, you know, to call somebody like that, say, oh, here we go, the haram police. Yeah. You know, it's a bit disheartening. You know, if the people, you know, would think about what exactly these individuals are trying to do. Is it that they're dead set on just destroying your day? Is that what they're trying to do? They want to prevent you from having fun? No, that's not it. These people see that the akhirah is the goal. And they see that what you're doing is going to prevent you from that lofty goal. So they're trying to prevent you from that. You as a rationally thinking person, If you disagree, you should, find an amicable way to let the person know thank you and be about your way. But rather than insult them by haram police, the people should definitely refrain from this.
Well, and that's why enjoining what is right and forbidding what is wrong has become so difficult in this day and age, right? Because the audience you're generally dealing with is so, not receptive to any kind of message of khair, and this is a big problem. We have to step back and realize that we are lacking in many ways. We don't know a lot of things. We don't have the level of knowledge that we should have. At least most of us don't, right? So there's a lot of things that we don't know. And we have to be receptive to someone who comes along giving us nasiha.
Right.
We shouldn't attack them. We shouldn't question their motives and intentions and say, they're just trying to show me up or this or that. As long as the nasiha is done in the correct way, there's a sunnah for giving the nasiha and there's a sunnah for receiving the nasiha.
Right.
And we should abide by these. We should know these. And these are very important for the ummah to basically coexist and function appropriately. We have to be able to give nasiha to each other and then, of course, receive it as well.
Right.
We'll go to a break right now and we'll be right back with our last segment.
A chance to gain reward I will spend on you, he says. يا ذا الجلال والإكرام يا حي يا قيوم لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا من الظالمين اللهم أحسن عاقبتنا في الأمور كلها وأجرنا من خزي الدنيا وعذاب الآخرة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم أصلح لنا ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا وأصلح لنا دنيانا التي فيها معاشنا وأصلح لنا آخرتنا التي إليها معادنا واجعل الحياة زيادة لنا في كل خير واجعل الموت راحة لنا من كل شر.
Try to recap what we do here at Huda TV for the past week, and we try to share with you some of the latest news that is happening behind the scenes here at the station.
Living Islam would love a cooking show to be aired for Arabic dishes. Also more programs for children regarding manners.
We want to go ahead and take a look at our YouTube page right now and see how it looks as it stands. Well, I'm on the screen right now, but I'm not on TV. I'm actually through YouTube, as you can see right there. It's the same exact thing that you see on TV here live. It's exactly the same thing that is on our YouTube page through our live streaming. A great way to stay in touch with us.
My first time to call Huda TV, but I like it too much.
Because there is no program in Huda TV that it is not important for our Muslims, inshallah.
A time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward I will spend on you.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Welcome back to A Time to Please Allah. The show is almost over. I think we've had a great show and a great topic. I hope it's been beneficial for you as it has been for us. We've been talking about the strangers. It's a topic that most people are aware of. And we've just been kind of highlighting some of the things, reminding ourselves and hopefully the viewers about some of the important topics. Now, we've mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ has given a command that we should not be estranged from the strangers. And we should be with the strangers, right? And one of the things I mentioned was that one of the qualities of the strangers is that they correct the people after they have become corrupted. Now, we know, of course, in this day and age, the people in general and many people, unfortunately, from this ummah have become corrupted to one level or another. And then we also talked about how the people who are trying to correct them run into so many challenges, right? But what we need to talk about on a practical level, how we can be from amongst these strangers, this blessed group. And before you answer that question, I want to mention that in the Arabic of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, Tuba lil ghuraba. So Tuba is translated in two different ways. One, of course, as you mentioned, as glad tidings. Imam al-Tabari, in his interpretation of this hadith, he mentions that Tuba is actually a tree in Jannah. And it's a very large tree. I think I said a horse rider would take 100 years to travel from one end of its shadow to the other end. And the clothes for the people of Jannah are taken from the leaves of this tree. So and it's in a very high place in the Jannah, and the Prophet ﷺ is promising this amazing tree for those people who are strange in this dunya. So this is a huge reward for us, a huge opportunity for us. So how can we be of these people?
So one of the ways is, as you mentioned, in that we should enjoin the good. And this enjoining the good is not just done in any way. It shouldn't be done in a harsh way. You should do it in a way that is pleasing to the people, that will make them want to listen to you. You know, and this is actually a part of da'wah also. It's not everybody that you can be rough and tough with. You know, maybe your brothers and sisters, you can be a little bit rough with them. But with the people in general, if you want to enjoin the good, you should do it in a pleasing way.
Right.
You should do it in a way that will make the people want to accept. Right. You know, like people, they want a nice, cool, refreshing drink. You know, not something that's hot and sour and bitter at the same time. You know, even if you tell them it's good for them, they'd rather have the drink that tastes good and is good for them rather than the one that's doesn't have the nice taste.
So there's two ways to get the message across, right? You have a choice.
Yes.
You can get it across in a harsh way or an easy way. And the sunnah in general is to take the easy route.
Right.
Try to smooth that message in.
Right.
So enjoining what is right, forbidding what is wrong is a very important aspect of the strangers. I think another aspect, if you could kind of talk about it a little bit more, is having fortitude, being firm.
Right.
On the truth. And
right.
I think this is a very important aspect of being.
And this is something that I'm personally seeing increasing in the ummah. You know, mashallah, I'm seeing that people are being patient. They're being more patient. They're learning from their mistakes. This is a very important issue here, that people, I'm personally, me, myself, my friends, the ummah in general, I'm seeing people learning from the mistakes that were made in the past. You know, there were some people that were harsh, and they realized this didn't work. So they tried a different way. And they continue trying different things, trying to improve until they get their message across. And, you know, this is fortitude, to keep going, to keep trying. Even if the people slam the doors in your face, even if they reject you harshly, you continue to try. This is part of that strangeness, because people will find it strange.
And then I think adherence to the truth, right? We have to first understand what the source of truth is, and we mentioned that in the beginning, that this being the Quran and Sunnah. It's not, what so-and-so said and it's in such and such book. Ultimately, everything has to go back to the Quran and Sunnah. That reference has to be there.
Right.
Even the true scholars, when we refer back to them, they have to also give their evidence from the
right.
Quran and Sunnah. They can't come up with anything from their own.
Right.
So once we have defined what the sources of truth are, that adherence to that, and I believe there's a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ that we should cling to his Sunnah with our molar teeth. Not our canines, not our incisors, but our molar teeth, because the molars are the strongest teeth in your mouth.
Right.
And we need to hold on to it so hard. So this shows that it will become difficult to hold on to the Sunnah. And when it becomes difficult, we need to hold on to it even tighter.
Even tighter. Right.
So this sort of adherence, that strength on to hold on to the truth in the face of the prevailing trends and notions. That I think the example I gave earlier was, imagine you're a dam and the flow of water is coming at you. This is what the scholars did in our history. This is what the prophets did before them, right? And this is the legacy that we've inherited that we should take.
Right.
To stand in the face of evil, to stand in the face of falsehood, and to stand up for that whatever the personal sacrifice may
Right.
be.
And to go along with that, in our day and time, we have a plethora of sources of information that we can access. And this would be one of the greatest things that we can do is to research, to read, to your ability. Nobody's saying, to read Sahih Bukhari in one day. Read to your ability. Learn something small and implement it. This is going to take you a long way. If you study from the original sources, correct sources, you implement it, you call people to it, this is going to take you a long way. This is going to be one of the most successful things that you can do. Because in order to prevent somebody or to call somebody to something good, you yourself have to know that this is correct.
Yes.
You have to know. So we're not saying everybody has to try to become a scholar, but we should all try to do what's within our means.
Right.
If it's within your means, just to go online, to go to a trusted website and do a little bit of research about something, tell your wife, tell your friends, your work colleagues, your classmates. This is enjoying the good.
Right. So we have to believe, we have to have the knowledge, and then I think maybe we went out of order a little bit, then we have to be firm on that. And I
Yes.
think this kind of goes with the basic, the surah, Surah Al-Asr, when Allah says that, mankind is in a loss except for those people who believe in work deeds of righteousness. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Right?
Exactly.
Those people who enjoin and call to the truth, and those people who have enjoin and call to the patience. Because if you are on the truth and you call to the truth, you better have a lot of patience.
Yes.
You better have a lot of fortitude and firmness and strength of character to stand up, because you're going to get a lot of abuse.
Right. And like I mentioned, I'm seeing in the Ummah today, mashallah, I'm seeing that more and more people are doing this.
Alhamdulillah.
This is something that is making me happy personally. More and more people are doing this. One of my students, actually a whole class of my students, I mentioned something about something, some issue in the class. I wasn't aware of the issue. The kids told me, "Oh, teacher, in Sahih Muslim, it says this, this, and this." I was stunned.
Yeah.
I was stunned. A class full of, grade 7 students are telling me, "Teacher, go look in Sahih Muslim about this issue." The Ummah, we are following this.
The potential is there.
The potential is definitely there. And I'm seeing more and more people are realizing this. And hopefully those students, they will grow up to be, older men and teach their children and so on and so forth to go on.
So I think that this is a guidance that we need to definitely impart on our children.
There's no
This
doubt.
definitely needs to be part of that tarbiyah, that upbringing of our children, that we teach them how important it is to be on the truth no matter what, in the face of whatever obstacles might come your way, that you have that strength of character, you're willing to stand up and just keep pushing forward. And, when, as the Sahaba asked, when will come the help of Allah? And Allah replied in the Quran, the help of Allah is near.
Yes.
Right? إِن تَنْصُرُ اللَّهِ يَنْصُرْكُمْ وَيُثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَكُمْ. If you help the cause of Allah, Allah will help you, and He will make your feet firm.
Yes.
So the help of Allah is near, but we have to stand up, right, for the truth.
Yes.
And the truth is, of course, going back to the Quran and Sunnah by the understanding of the Sahaba.
Right. And that hadith that we mentioned about Islam beginning strange and will end strange, this should have a psychological boost for you also. That if you find yourself in a situation where you feel like you're the only one, or you're one of a few who are trying, who are striving, that don't worry. Don't worry. We have been told that this is going to happen.
Right.
So don't give up. Don't be demoralized. Continue.
Right.
That there's going to be good for you in this. Either in the next life or in this life also. And that
of
people will
course,
follow you.
As long as you're on the truth, Allah is always with you.
Exactly.
So that's all the time we have. So we're going to have to go ahead and take your leave from you. I hope this show has been beneficial for you as it has been for us. And join us again next week, same time, same place, coming to you live from Dubai on for a time to please Allah on Huda TV. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
To please Allah, a chance to gain reward, I will spend on you, he says, on all who spend in good cause. Good deeds are opportunities, sparkling bright and true, raising you in the sight of Allah and adorning Al-Jannah for you. So rush to earn his reward, don't forget the oppressed.